So, hi and welcome, Sara, to the podcast. I'm really happy that you're here to do some coaching with me today.
Thank you, Alyssa, for inviting me and welcoming to this space.
So, why don't you start by telling me just a short summary of where you are in your career and what would feel helpful to you to work on together today?
Okay, so for the past 5 years, I was on a corporate job working in sustainability, helping companies with their sustainability strategies and communication, communicating with different stakeholders. And the past 3 years, I also did my PhD, and I was feeling that, like last year, end of the year, I decided to quit that corporate job. It was actually end of October because I was feeling that my job didn't have enough positive impact. I didn't feel that I started a podcast because I wanted to have that positive impact because I believe that is through education that people will understand the urgency and the need to change their attitudes and behaviors and moving forward to a more sustainable state. So that was why I started the podcast like a year ago. And somehow it was not aligned to with the company. So, but yes, I decided that it was time for me to pursue something different and more aligned with my purpose
Mhm.
and my.
I'm hearing that part of that decision to leave was that you wanted to move deeper into that concept that you'd started to explore with your podcast of how education can really be a solution in the face of climate change. Is that right?
Yes, I think education can play a huge role, and we are not investing enough on education. And that was why I started the podcast We Need to Act, and also a program for children in Colombia, like last November, to raise their awareness and also to educate them on different issues, but mainly environmental challenges we face, and to reconnect them with nature, and also to find solutions. That is something that they learn at school, but also they we engage with the parents and the community, and it's also. And I believe that I need to continue to do that. And right now, I feel like I'm just exploring options. I want to continue investing in that education. I just need to see how to do it in a way that is sustainable, economically sustainable for me,
Mm.
and also continue to have a positive impact in my community, in other communities, in the world, in other people.
Yeah, beautiful. So it seems, you're really clear on your why, on your motivation. It feels really powerful when you talk about that. And I'm curious to know this, the project that you mentioned in Colombia,
Mhm.
if it were possible for you, if it were economically sustainable, as you said,
Mhm.
for you to be fully immersed in that project, how would that feel to you?
Yeah, I would feel happy, fulfilled because I it's incredible to see how happy they are doing small things that I mean how happy children are, the ones that are participating in the program, to see them doing small stuff, learning about regenerative agriculture, or learning about, well, first the this soil degradation and how to compost, and to learn that those small things that they don't learn anymore at schools. And well, and other stuff. It's really, it feels good, because it gives you hope that we can one step at a time. And if you even if you touch you might have a small audience like us. I don't know about your audience, but it is hard to build an audience for a
Mm,
podcast,
it
for
is.
instance. It takes time to grow the audience. But I think, like, even if we only reach like 10 people, something will come out of that,
Mhm. Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, for me, it's really about the depth of connection as
Hmm.
well, because you can reach hundreds, thousands of people in what impressions or something, meaningless, some algorithm speak, or you can deeply connect with 10 people and actually potentially change the course of their lives and affect them or inspire them to the degree that they will then go and connect with another 10 people. And for me, it's really about, yeah, shifting away from this idea of like volume and metrics to actually the real quality of the connection that we're building.
No, that's true. And that's beautiful. And that is what keeps me moving because,
Mm.
it is hard.
It is, absolutely. It's hard. You really have to have you have to have faith, I think, to keep going. But it sounds what I'm hearing, and tell me where I'm wrong, is that for you, it's not about a kind of not knowing what the direction should be. I mean, what I'm hearing is that you really believe in your podcast and everything that you're doing with the podcast. And for anyone listening, I will link to Zada's podcast in the show notes. But and also what you're doing with the project in Colombia and the education with children, like it sounds like that could be it for you. That could be where you want to focus and where you want to really dedicate your career.
Mhm.
And the question is, how do you make that work from a financial perspective? Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, it is. It is. Although I must say that I'm like a more complex person because
Mm.
I, and now during this past month, which is something, sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Well,
Think out loud. That's what we're here for.
so when I decided to quit my job, there was something I really needed to do because since I was a child, I was very artistic. So I wanted to develop that side of myself that was kind of hidden. And so I started to do different things like singing and composing and, well, painting again. What else? Photography.
Mm.
So because I think that also helps us kind of balance energies. And I think it's for you to leave to find your purpose, you must find yourself first, or accept yourself the way you are. And this is it has been my path the past couple of months. Like, okay, let's do some work, inner work, and reconnect with what you as a child love to
Mhm.
do. Like, I was always painting and doing playing and doing singing, dancing, and these
Mm.
things that we tend to
We
lose
do.
when we when we grow old.
So you've been re-exploring the creative side of yourself and all these creative outlets. And I think what I'm hearing is that you would love to find a way to weave that into your work life as well.
Yes, so that's it, to find the
Yeah.
right balance between. And I think it's, if you think about sustainability, um, because it's, when you think about sustainability is a future state, a balanced state. It's like a notion. It's like the notion of justice. We have it, but it's difficult to achieve because we never been in these conditions, like the challenges we face have. So I think to find sustainability, we have to be creative in terms of
Mm.
to find the best solutions, but we also have to be, well, to reconnect with nature. That is something really important, to find nature, to see that we are part of a whole. We are not the masters of the whole, we are just a tiny part of the whole. And also to find again the joy of exploring, and in a sense that artistically speaking, exploring, we, because we used to, we do, like humans that are very unique to humans. I was thinking about dancing, but also there are some animals that also dance. Think that, like birds, they do dance,
Mm.
other animals. But like painting, something that we do like since I don't know, since we are here, like cavemans and women. Yeah. So I think that we I can combine areas, arts and
Absolutely, yeah.
sustainability.
I mean, it sounds like you have a kind of inherently sustainable understanding of what your economic situation can look like. I mean, as you describe it, I have this image of a really healthy and resilient ecosystem with, a lot of different sources, a lot of variety, this the ability that ecosystems to have to adapt to different conditions. To me, it's always seemed kind of extremely unsustainable to have one single source of income and to be dependent on one single source of income, which is sort of what's held up as the kind of the norm, or what we should aspire to. And I know that people stepping out of corporate, there's often a lot of fear because you're very reliant on that kind of stable paycheck. And perhaps just as someone who's never had that that stable paycheck, that actually feels quite frightening to me, because then someone can take that away. And what I love about the idea of sort of building like economic ecosystems with a lot of variety, a lot of different sources, is that they can kind of flex and respond to to what's happening around us. And there might be times when you, I don't know, perhaps you have sources of funding that allow you to commit more to your work in Colombia, and other times when the creative work is really flowing, and perhaps there's even some sort of kind of monetary possibilities in that as well. And maybe other times when you go back to maybe a more kind of your kind of more core skill set that you were using in the corporate world, and apply that in different ways. And I can sort of really envisage that ecosystem as you're talking. And I'd love to hear what that economic ecosystem would look like to you, ideally, how you would like that to be structured.
Well, that is a great question. I think, well, as a mother, I always think about stability, right? You have to, that's why when you have a source, one source of income, but it's a steady, like you kind of feel more confident. But as you said, you can lose that too. And when you have like different sources of income, it probably takes, I mean, it probably is more difficult to start with,
Mm,
to build that ecosystem, diversified ecosystem, because you, well, you have to put your attention in different things, and you have to build that. But perhaps in the long term, you will have, as you said, like more stability, because you don't depend on one source of income but
mm.
several, and if something happens to one, you will have the others.
That's right. And there's another aspect which I think is relevant to your journey, which is that I think you're more empowered in that situation, and you have more ability to make choices that align with your values. And
Mhm.
that obviously you have that experience of doing work that, I'm sure on paper very much looked like the kind of work that you should be doing, but your lived experience was that it didn't allow you to fully live into your values and explore the kind of educational work that you wanted to do and felt so passionately about. And I think this is another danger when we do have a sort of a single source of income, is that we're also giving a lot of our power to the provider of that income. It makes it much more difficult to make those kind of personal choices or those value-based choices. And this is another reason why I think the sort of ecosystem approach hopefully gives us a lot more freedom to really build something that is very much grounded in the kind of world that we want to see.
That's true. Yeah, I believe that. I just sometimes it feels frightening.
Mm,
I think at the beginning, because as I said to you, during the past 5 years, I was invested in this corporate job, and I took a leap of faith and said, no, I need to do something more aligned with my
mm.
values and what I believed in. But it takes time and it takes a lot of effort for you to build the connections, the right connections, and for you to start having that income. But as you said, I think it starts. Uh, the first step is to believe and
Yeah,
be capable.
exactly. And that's why I was asking you about, can you picture what it looks like? Can you think about what the ingredients are and think, because the more clarity that you can build for yourself around, you're not going to be able to know exactly what it looks like, but
Mhm,
what are the component parts? I think I offered that it could have sort of three components: the creative, well, actually four: the creative side, the podcast, your project in Colombia, and perhaps some kind of more conventional consultancy
mhm,
offer that might, that can draw on all of the skills and experience that you've had from the
mhm,
corporate world, and that perhaps gives you a more kind of short term source of income, potentially something that's a little bit easier, it's more understood, and I think it could be helpful if those feel right, like the right pillars, to
mhm,
start kind of mapping it out in your mind, that these are the pillars, and then within those pillars, you know what is the role of each of them, how is each of them resourced economically. So, like I said, it could be, if you look at the consultancy pillar, and you can tell me you might hate that idea and not think that should be part of the picture at all, but something like that, let's say a more conventional pillar,
mhm.
could give you some of the stability that you're looking for as you build out this ecosystem. So this could be your kind of short-term
Uh-huh.
stable pillar. And, and then something like the project in Colombia may well be something that you're actually looking for sources of funding, you
Yeah.
know, for. It's not a sort of transactional model. And then you can think about, like, how does the podcast and creativity, fit into these? Do they need to have any kind of short-term monetary exchange attached to them? Or is this more something that you're building up for the long term, that perhaps, how do they support the other pillars? Is there an opportunity for your podcast to help you to offer these consultancy services? Or, could it be that your creative work is connected with the educational work that you're doing? I mean, tell me, for me, like, as you can sort of start mapping out, I'm really visual, and I know not everybody is, but I start sort of seeing it
Uh-huh.
mapped out, and I think that can help, give some clarity as to, what's the timescale going to look like? Where do I need to focus right now? How is that feeling?
Yeah, it feels right. And there is also the part of me as a researcher because I
Mm,
continue to do
tell me
research.
more about that.
I'm connected to the research center at the university, so I continue to do research in related to sustainability communication. And I also have some goals regarding that. But it looks like, as you portrayed, it looks interesting ecosystem. Although I need to just to understand how those different areas can touch each other and can, how do you say, feed each other, because
Mm,
otherwise you will probably be focused on one at some point and then left the others out, and then you can lose track. And
that's right. And I think I was actually thinking of the concept of the web of life, actually. I think some way of, and you're creative, so actually my invitation to you would be, could you find a way to visually create this, like, map it out, draw, sketch it out, paint it, I don't know, however it is, so that
uh-huh.
you can start to kind of see it, in your mind. So you have some kind of creative expression of
Mhm.
what this, and I think we've now kind of identified sort of five pillars there, including your role as a researcher.
Mhm.
And then, and then within those you can start kind of detailing down, what are the opportunities that are there right now? What do I want to build up in the long term? What kind of mix would I be looking for each of these to contribute to my overall economic picture? But then also, to come back to the web analogy, to start to draw like those connections that,
Mhm.
create those lines between it. Because I think when people consider this kind of economic ecosystem approach, as opposed to a kind of very linear, one directional flow of income, one of the things is it just feels overwhelming, because it's like, how am I gonna, I'm right. You're just suggesting I need to juggle all of these different plates, Alyssa. And I think when you can see how it all interconnects, that really helps to find that it is actually all part of one whole. So what are, like, is it possible to draw some kind of line between each of these different areas so that each of them are feeding each other and supporting each other, and that then that it's okay if one, if opportunities come up and you're very busy with research for a while, that
Mhm.
that it's still feeding in to the other areas. And at some point that might take more of a back seat, and it might be that your podcast is really something that you want to be building on, and it's taking a lot of your time, and but you, again, it's feeding into each of the other areas. So how does that homework feel, to create some kind of visual representation of your economic ecosystem?
Well, it feels the right first step to start building. Like I think I to start to solidify that idea of a diversified ecosystem, and then start like see how I can start doing what are the actions in terms of short term, like what
Mhm.
should I do first. And yeah, and I have some ideas. So but it is also, and probably something that you are very familiar with, is how to put yourself at, how do I say this, how to, because as a consultant you are also a consultant. Well, you actually you are yeah, you are a consultant, right? For different
Mhm.
people you are coaching and advising people. And how do you put yourself out there?
Yeah. It's a
It's
great
a
question.
barrier.
And yeah, I have two immediate thoughts on that. One is that you are already doing that.
Yes.
You have a podcast, not everyone, that's a big step, you're putting your voice out there, you're making an offering to an audience, like, every single week. So you are already doing that. And this is again where this idea of, like, this is how the connections can really help you.
Mhm.
You may not have the experience of doing that as a consultant, but you do have the experience of doing that as a podcast. You set up your own educational project in Colombia. You know how to get things off the ground and get things started. And this is what's so beautiful about when we kind of create these webs of the different areas of interest or areas of expertise, is that it empowers us, because we realize, okay, I may not have done it in this area, but I know how to do it in this area. So how can I just link between the two? How can I build on that? And it might be as direct as, you may mention your consulting offer on your podcast. That's a really direct way of doing it. But it might just be that you connect into the same confidence that you bring to your podcast
Mhm.
as you think of putting your consultancy offer out there.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because you are already doing it.
Yeah. I'm already doing that. The difference is that I'm not making money out of that. And I
Yeah.
think when you think about monetizing something, it's I don't know, it is a perhaps a greater responsibility.
Mm.
I don't
Well,
know.
I think that's such an interesting point that you raised, and this is a really strong theme for me at the moment, of what happens when we bring money into the equation, when money kind of gets that control over us. And what I would offer is to play with the idea of, how can I think about how you feel when you record a podcast episode or when you put it out. I'm going to make some assumptions here, but from having listened to your podcast and been a guest on your podcast, there's a real ease to how you do it. There's a real kind of flow. It feels like when you were interviewing me, it feels like you have this real conviction that this is something that matters, that it's something that is important, and that you can kind of just let it happen because you've created the space for it and it's going to happen. I would think about maybe, write down, do some free writing. How do I feel when I do the podcast? Or how do I feel when I bring people together to make these projects happen in Colombia? And then how can you take that feeling and translate that into a situation where you're doing exactly the same thing. You're creating a space for possibilities. You're bringing people together to make connections, to make something happen. And you also happen to be asking for money in return. And I would invite you to try to see the money piece as a different kind of value exchange. That it's not, well, that was all doable and easy because I didn't have to ask it for any money. So yeah, of course I can do that when I don't have to ask for money. But, and this is not you, this is almost all of us, I think, feel this way. Like, oh, but as soon as I'm asking for money, that feels like there's a tightness to it or a tension or like there's, the risk of rejection or failure. And we kind of load it with all of this
Mhm.
emotion. But there isn't really any need for that to feel any different than to say, hey, would you like to come on my podcast and do an interview with me? Like, hey, I
Mhm.
have these skills in this area. Would you be interested in me doing this piece of work for you? There's no reason it needs to feel energetically any different. It's just the emotion and the heaviness that we attach to money. And this, again, within this ecosystem, I think you have the possibility to treat all of those different opportunities, some of which will have money attached to them and some which won't, with the same kind of joy and the same ease and the same conviction and creativity that like just flow out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, you are totally right. I don't have anything to add to what you have just said. Yeah, I just need to bring more of that emotion.
And it takes, it takes a lot of practice because we all carry a lot of stories around money and a lot of emotion and a lot of conditioning, but I think it's just about really noticing like when that tension or whatever it is for you creeps in,
Mm-hmm.
and just reminding yourself that there is no need to approach it any differently to the kind of openness that you would with a not-for-profit or with a podcast offering. And just play with it. Just play, can I be that version of Sara when I'm talking about consultancy work?
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna be something for you to play with around the feeling around money, right? And consciously choosing how you want to feel.
Mhm.
And that really all of it is an invitation. It's an invitation to come on the podcast. It's an invitation for someone to enjoy your art. It's an invitation for someone to be part of your educational project. It's an invitation for someone to pay you to do consultancy work or pay you to do research. It's all an invitation. And you get to choose how that invitation feels to you.
Okay, and that energy will be received if I,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. People feel the difference immediately.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
one thing before we wrap up, I'd really love to leave you with this piece of homework. If you're up for it,
Okay.
of creating some piece of art around this ecosystem.
Mhm.
Because the reason I specifically suggest that is what most of us would naturally do is be like, right, I'm going to get the spreadsheet out, and I'm going to put some columns in, or I'm going to write up a big Google Doc about this. And then we put ourselves into quite a constrained mindset. And you talked so beautifully at the beginning about the role of creativity and the childlike connection when you're
Mhm.
doing those creative activities. And I think it would make all the difference for you if you could start work on your ecosystem
Mhm.
from that childlike perspective of the joy of creating art.
Mhm.
So do you have some ideas of what that might look like, how you might approach it?
Visually speaking,
Yeah. Or
um,
what would be a fun way to what would be a really fun and creative way to start that mapping out process?
well, actually, one of the things that I do, but I haven't been doing that lately because, as I said to you, it was like the past year. It was really intense in terms of can PhD and research and stuff. But I do illustration, so it's something that I'm have to go back to do that. That's a funny thing, and also helps me materialize some ideas. So I might doodle it, how to do
Yeah,
it.
Google it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it can be a fun thing to start doodling and see how it goes in terms
wonderful.
of ideas and how they connect. Imagine if it was a city or something, like you have different buildings, like the building of the creativity, the building of what is about research center, or then the sustainability, whatever. And then you can start building roads, how they connect, and what transports will take you there.
Mm,
How would you? So that could be like
yeah,
something.
yeah. You've already moved into such a creative space with it. It's lovely, and if you would like to share it with me, I would love to see your doodles if you feel like you would like to share.
Okay, I will. I will start doing that and we'll share with you. Uh,
Okay. So before we finish, tell me one thing, Sara, that you really want to hold on to from our session today and something you really want to take away with you.
Something that you said regarding, which is important and is something that I deal with that daily, but I don't put much attention to it, which is the emotion I feel when I do this sort of things like the podcast and inviting people to come in, or when I'm doing the project in Colombia. And it is that the emotion I feel, and I have the skills to do it, and also the emotion, so I can also do the other part of like, or so yeah, I think this is my takeaway, is like to feel that feeling when I'm doing or looking to do the other
Yeah,
stuff that is needed.
that's right, because you get to choose. You get to choose how you feel.
So I
Yeah,
have it in me.
you do. Absolutely. I have no doubt. I'm so excited for what you're already starting to create.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, for doing this coaching and for letting my audience to hear your experience. I know there will be a lot of people who will be connecting and resonating with a lot of things that you said and will be taking some of these ideas and putting them into practice in their own careers. So thank you for contributing in that way.
Thank you for welcoming me on your podcast and for giving me the space to talk about the challenges, the things that worry me, and to also start building more confidence around this, to put myself out there. Actually, I'm already out there, so
You
to
are.
move forward, continue to do the work, but in a different perspective.
Yeah, wonderful. And for anyone listening who has enjoyed listening or watching into Sarah's coaching session today, if you want to come on the podcast and do some coaching yourself, then please get in touch with me, or you can go to regenerativeworklife.com/sticking point and book a time for your own session. All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.